quickly. Here's one here about the Chargers meltdown. This is from Blazing Shackles. He says, Hacksaw, you're a hack. He didn't melt down, and it's not his fault the receivers can't catch. We've seen coach after coach after coach come and go over the last 30 years and still no championship. The one thing that remains the same is the team's owner, Spanos. When are you hacks and pundits going to place the blame where it belongs, on Spanos' head?
Well, they call themselves the first family of football, Blaze. They're currently in last place in the AFC West. It is a problem. It is a Spanos problem. I concur with you. But that being said, this is Brandon Staley's team. Front page of Brandon Staley's resume talked about his defensive accomplishments with Sean McVay when he was coordinator with the Rams and the other places he's been. He bears responsibility for what's happening on game day, the X's and O's, the schemes, the formations, and to a degree, the roster decisions. So, yeah, he melted down. And instead of him lecturing the media, don't ask me that question ever again. Hey, dude, scoreboard does not lie. You're 31st in the league in defense. You're 32nd in the NFL pass defense. You are what your record says you are, and that's not very good right now. So I don't quite agree with you that I should not be banging on Brandon Staley, because the whole world is banging on Brandon Staley right now. But in the big picture of things, yeah, you are correct. First family of football's in last place in the AFC West, and that's gone on and on and on since 1984. Am I right or am I right?
Yeah, it's like Bill Parcells, right? You are what your record says you are. And, a lot of the fans were saying, like, you can't blame Staley for these receivers dropping passes and everything else. But, if it's not one thing, it's another, right? And who's the focal guy here? I mean, Staley bears blame, but, the rest of the front office, it just doesn't, it's not working.
What I don't understand is you have all week to prepare. You have had preseason. Prior to that, you had OTAs. There is no reason the Quentin Johnston, the number one pick, should not be further involved in running routes and catching balls. You're paying him a lot of money as a number one pick. You desperately need him. You needed to coach him up every stop along the way.
Yeah.
And, the union says, well, you only have so much time on the field with those guys. That does not mean your quarterback cannot have special sessions, side sessions, where they're running specific routes, and he's got to catch the ball. Instead, he's dropping balls, and he did this at TCU. And so, that's just one example. I don't know how you solve the mess in the secondary, because they're playing all the guys they got on the roster, and they've still not been able to find the right guys. And I told you the story the week prior. Asante Samuel, who's been burned a bunch of times, made a bunch of plays, but burned a bunch of times. Asante Samuel is on a pass route Sunday in Green Bay. Guy runs a slant and is open. Samuel's behind him. Ball goes way over his head. Samuel's jumping up and down like, I did.
Yeah.
The hell, you did nothing. Jordan Love overthrew the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Next play, Samuel ran up the back of the guy, pass interference, big play, led to the game-winning touchdown.
Unbelievable.
That kind of junk, it just continues to go on and on and on. Okay, next social media shot.
Let's get another shot in here. And this is about the Padres. This is from Sean. He says, Waka and Lugo were no-brainers to bring back. Snell and Hader would be nice if you could get them on a reasonable deal, but less likely. A purge needed to happen with the goal of having better balance on offense, being more consistent. The young arms could help during a long season, but the goal is to be playing the best baseball at the end and good enough to make the second season. Winning division does not matter with the current playoff structure.
Here's the situation. Yes, they got one-year rentals that worked out. They put option clauses in those rentals. If those guys had good seasons, they could come back at a much higher price. That being said, the option dollar number on Waka and Lugo and even Nick Martinez is pretty high. I don't think you can afford to pay your third and fourth starters and your long reliever $16 million apiece. That's too high. So they rented them. It worked out. They'll dive back in, find some more rentals. Hopefully those guys will be good as the guys that left. The other oddball part of this is, some of these guys have health issues. So even though agent says opt out, take you to free agency, hell, they still might be sitting here the second week of February without a contract because nobody's going to be willing to give Waka, who's had 3 different shoulder issues, willing to give him 3 years at mega money. So then the Padres dive back in and say, come back. You had a good season. We'll give you a bit of a pay bump. Maybe we'll give you 2 years instead of just the 1 year. There's a way if these guys, but some of these guys may still be out there a ways down road. The question is, how long can AJ wait if he can't get him re-signed? Because then other guys will start coming off the board and go into other places. And in terms of Soto, I tend to think that every one of the guys in that batting order who had a substandard season, and they all did statistically, they're going to bounce back. But the problem is their payroll issue. And the problem is if you try to trade Soto, you're not going to get back what you traded for him. You traded 6. You traded the whole farm system to get him. Somebody else is not going to give you the whole farm system to rent him for 1 year with the hope they can convince Scott Boras to stay. So Padres are painted into a really tough corner. And now they, as we talked about last week, John, there are 9 pitchers gone from last year's pitching staff. 9.
Wow.
That's big names. That's bottom of the roster names.
Mm-hmm.
That's AAA guys. They're gone. They're all on the open market, and I don't know if you can get them back. So Padres have a fascinating, very important couple of weeks of baseball going into December, going towards winter meetings.
Well, thank goodness they didn't sign Lance Lynn. Okay, so that's good. But the Lugo and Waka and Martinez, those guys are going to get paid, man. I mean, the other teams desperately need pitching, so they're going to work out a deal. I'm certain of it. The Padres may be on the short end of that, and if they lose out on these guys to come back, I don't know what the heck they're going to do. It's not like they're the Dodgers have all these young kids that are ready to come up, so they could be in some trouble here.
We'll see where this goes. Like I said last week, probably some trades for 1-year rentals to stabilize it. And there'll be other guys out there they can find that they've scouted. I mean, when they signed those 3 pitchers out of Japan, when Suarez came here and Garcia came here and Nick Martinez, and I knew about Garcia, and he had done well as reliever in St. Louis till he got hurt. I said, well, maybe one of these will work out. Well, all 3 of them worked out to different degrees, just like Waka. Mm-hmm. and Lugo worked out. So there'll be some guys out there that AJ will find because AJ's got boots on the ground, lots of different places. But he better, because otherwise that coach is not going to have a pitching staff, and that's a big, big issue. A couple more here on social media.
All right. You got to hear from your days at Extra 690. This is for thanks for subscribing. He says, wow, great memories. I always tell people I listened to Romy before anybody knew who he was. The basement days, Extra Sports 690.
Well, we had a unique team. We're going to do a salute to Sports Talk Radio and Extra 690 somewhere down road when we have time to put it all together. But it was a unique time. I think what made it so special is we were the first ones on the block to do it. There, at that point, Sports Talk Radio did not exist in Southern California as it does now. We were the first ones through the wall, and we were fortunate to have an owner that put us on a 77,000-watt blowtorch signal that you could hear from Baja to the Canadian Rockies up and down the West Coast day and night. So we're very proud of what we did, and each of the guys was very successful in different things, and some of us are still doing it very well.
Well, back when they made the move to go 24/7 sports, were people saying you guys are crazy? This is never going to work because, no one's really ever done it. I mean,
my whole life in radio was in radio, news talk, sports radio. The owner brought it up to me, and dummy that I was. Are you sure about this? You sure this is going to work? Without paying attention to the fact that nobody had done it on the West Coast. And we were on a 77,000-watt blowtorch signal that you could hear everywhere. Now, WFAN in New York was the first to launch. WIP in Philadelphia was the second. We were right there. We were the third. Then came EEI in Boston, and then it finally exploded. But so we were the first through the wall, and nobody had ever done it since. And with apologies to what's being done right now, nobody's done what we did with the type of personalities that we did. Very expensive format to be in. It is not a cheap format whatsoever. Mm-hmm. You do have to have a good quality play-by-play anchor to be successful, and we did. As the Chargers were bad, the Chargers got good, and it kind of made our station. And then corporate radio came in and changed everything. So, yeah, we're going to do a special salute to Sports Talk Radio back in the day, somewhere down the road.
Okay, you want to get a couple more in here?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go here. Talk a little bit about the Aztecs and Brady Hoke, and this is from Dodger 607. He says, The smaller conferences need to start thinking out of the box collectively and not try to be accepted by the Power Five schools, which they will never be.
Well, the issue is if you're a group of five and you're good, if you're San Diego State, if you were Boise State, you got following and you're in a bigger market. If you get to that next level, if you get into the Pac-12, Pac-2, whatever it's going to be called, you'll be able to recruit better players. Now, whether or not that's going to allow you to trigger bigger pools of NIL money, that's very debatable. San Diego State, for a marketplace as big as it is, for as many alumni as live here, they just don't have much NIL football money, and that's a real problem. Now, that's going to change because the NCAA's new executive director, Charlie Baker, is going to get control of the NIL, and they will come up with a different structure. And they're going to tighten the transfer portal that John Riley, you can only go into the portal one time. You can only transfer one time. They're going to stop the cherry picking that's gone on. But everybody in a group of five, I mean, I got all kinds of friends in the Mid-American Conference at Ohio, at Toledo, at Western Michigan, at Bowling Green, Miami. They all got the same problems: limited NIL money and getting cherry-picked from the Big Ten or the Big 12 to come in and suddenly steal your top right tackle or your quarterback or your running back. You know, the top running back at UCLA is a transfer from Ball State.
Oh, wow.
Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback he was a record-setting quarterback at Kent State. He wound up at UCLA for his final season. So the group of fives are probably going to get this thing solved with the new leadership at the NCAA. But if you go to the Pac-12, and that's on your business card, that opens up a lot more recruiting doors. Now, do you have the wherewithal? Do you have the money to be able to stay in the race with the established Washingtons and Southern Cals, et cetera? Mm-hmm. So that's a long-winded answer to your short question. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with being in the Mountain West. I happen to think it's a really colorful conference. Community, the fans sure don't seem to like it. They seem to think it's real substandard, sub-tier. You're a fan. You tell me. You a Mountain West fan, or do you think, nah?
Well, I went to a number of the games when the Aztecs played at Qualcomm. And they were always pretty entertaining, a lot of fun. You know, it was relatively inexpensive to go. And I've been to the one at Snapdragon. It was a lot more money. You know, I was intrigued by this Dodger 607 guy saying, think out of the box. And I was thinking to myself, what could the group of five schools do to make them special and different? Because, you know, remember in baseball, the American League had the designated hitter. They did something different. What if, I'm just thinking spitballing here, but what if the group of five changed their rules to be like Canadian football? And so it was a more wide open, more dynamic offensive game. Might that make it more sexy?
Spitballs are illegal, John. What they could do is, and I think this is obvious, part and parcel what they might do, is work out alliances and scheduling. So you get some big names that actually come to your building. Mm-hmm. If the Oregon Ducks were coming here to play the Aztecs, I think you'd draw a nice crowd.
But obviously, UCLA didn't draw a big crowd, though.
Mm-hmm. That's because the aura of Aztec football right now is in a down cycle. The prices are way too high. It's an issue. They got to find a working relationship to reestablish this with the community, and they got to throw the football.
Well, maybe if they could just have Dolly Parton for the halftime show.
Oh, I'd be there. You'd be there.
Yeah, wasn't that amazing? 77 years old, man. That was unbelievable.
So that's where we are. But you are correct. You know, be who you can be. I'll be intrigued to see 2 years from tonight as we're doing this podcast, if there is a Mountain West movement and everybody goes to the Pac-2 with Oregon State, Washington State, then how do the communities respond? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be fascinating to see what they end up doing.
Okay, listen, we hope you have enjoyed our Friday bonus pack.